On a hot summer night in January 1983, a 10-year-old girl named Louise Bell went to bed in her family home in Hackham West, a suburb of Adelaide, South Australia. She shared a small front room with her younger sister Rachel, and their window was slightly open to let some air in. But when their parents checked on them the next morning, Louise was gone. Her bed was empty, and the fly screen on the window had been cut. Louise had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt her family and the community for decades. Louise's disappearance sparked a massive police investigation involving hundreds of officers and thousands of door knocks. It was one of the largest searches ever conducted in suburban Adelaide, but it yielded no clues. No one had seen or heard anything suspicious that night, and there was no sign of a struggle or forced entry. The only evidence was Louise's yellow pajama top, which was found 2 weeks later on a neighbor's lawn, torn and dirty, and a pair of gold earrings which were left under a broken brick on a nearby corner, along with a chilling phone call from a man who claimed to have Louise.
Hello? I have Louise. She is happy. She doesn't want to go home. She is sick. She has a fever.
Who are you? Where are you? Please let her go.
No, she is mine now. You will never see her again. The police are stupid, they can't find me. Look under the brick, you will find her earrings. Goodbye.
The caller had a distinctive European accent and seemed to mock the police and the family, but he was never identified, and the call could not be traced. It was the last time anyone ever heard from Louise or her abductor. Her body was never found, and her fate remains unknown. Louise's family was devastated by her loss and never gave up hope of finding her. They appealed to the public for any information and kept her room as it was, waiting for her return. They also had to endure the agony of false leads, false confessions, and false accusations. In 1984, a man named Raymond John Giesing was arrested and charged with Louise's murder, based on the testimony of prison informants who claimed he had confessed to them. Giesing had a history of sexually abusing children and lived near Louise's home at the time of her disappearance. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, but his conviction was overturned 17 months later. When one of the key witnesses changed his story, Giesing was later jailed again for sexually abusing two sisters in the 90s. In 2013, almost 30 years after Louise's disappearance, a breakthrough came in the case. A new DNA technique developed in the Netherlands linked Louise's pajama top to a man named Pfennig, a former teacher who had been convicted of murdering another 10-year-old boy, Michael Black, in 1989. Pfennig had also lived in the same neighborhood as Louise and was known to suffer from insomnia and wander the streets at night. He was arrested and charged with Louise's murder and faced a lengthy trial. The trial of Pfennig was one of the longest and most complex in South Australian history. It lasted for several months and involved dozens of witnesses, experts, and prosecutors. The prosecution argued that Pfennig had abducted Louise through her window, killed her, and disposed of her body. They presented DNA evidence from Louise's pajama top, which matched Pfennig's profile with a probability of more than 1 in a billion. They also presented evidence of Pfennig's phone call to the neighbor, his voice being recognized by a former colleague and a linguist. And they presented evidence of Pfennig's confessions to fellow inmates, in which he admitted to killing Louise and Michael. Pfennig's defense lawyer argued that the evidence was insufficient, unreliable, and contaminated. He challenged the validity and accuracy of the DNA testing, suggesting that it could have been transferred from Pfennig's daughter, who played basketball with Louise. He challenged the credibility and motives of the prison informants, who had received benefits for their testimony. He challenged the identification and interpretation of the phone call, claiming that it could have been a prank or a hoax, and he challenged the possibility and plausibility of Pfennig's abduction of Louise, pointing out the lack of physical evidence, witnesses, or motive. Pfennig himself did not testify at his trial and showed no emotion throughout the proceedings. He maintained his innocence and denied any involvement in Louise's disappearance. In November 2016, the judge delivered his verdict, finding Pfennig guilty of Louise's murder beyond reasonable doubt. He said he was satisfied that the DNA evidence was conclusive and that the other evidence corroborated it. He said he was not persuaded by the defense arguments and that he found Pfennig to be a cunning and manipulative liar. He sentenced Pfennig to 35 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. Louise's family welcomed the verdict, saying that it brought them some closure and justice after 33 years of pain and uncertainty. They thanked the police, the prosecutors, and the judge for their work, and said they hoped that Pfennig would reveal the location of Louise's body so they could finally lay her to rest. Pfennig showed no remorse for his crime and refused to cooperate with the police. He appealed his conviction, but it was dismissed by the Supreme Court in 2018. He died in prison in 2020, taking his secrets to the grave. Louise Bell remains one of the most tragic and haunting cases in Australian history. Her disappearance shocked and saddened the nation and left a lasting impact on her family and the community. She is remembered as a bright, beautiful, and innocent girl who loved dancing, singing, and playing with her sister. She is also remembered as a symbol of hope, courage, and resilience, who inspired many to seek justice and truth. Louise Bell gone but not forgotten.